No, because I know that makes it into the recording
I can hear
every
it.
time.
Here we're doing everything we can to mitigate noise, and it's like
That's exactly what it's like.
Podcasting from the Mobile Command Center in a random, undisclosed location deep within the USSA. This is the show for hard-working, liberty-minded individuals who understand that freedom doesn't come from a government agency. Our mission is to help you forge individual liberty in the age of information. This is the Liberty Forge.
Hey, welcome back to the Liberty Forge podcast. I'm Kyle.
I'm Merrick.
Boy, you sound ready to go.
I am.
This is episode 39. Merrick, I think you're going to enjoy this one. I've got Sherry Voluntary on to talk to us today.
Oh, that's awesome. I love her.
Isn't she a sweetheart?
There's something super cool about people. You know, we always ripping on how there's not enough women in our, I'm using my stupid quotes, movement. We got to come up with a better word than that. Anyway, the ones who are in here, you know, in our sphere, in our room, are super damn cool. And even when we disagree with them by, you know, a couple of degrees or something, you know, she's very easy to get along with. And I think that that's great because it lets everybody be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And isn't that a wonderful thing?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that she came on the show today. I love the work that Sherry does with Alan and Little L Productions. Her shows are awesome, and I'm glad she had time to come on and talk to us. But before we get into the interview, today's episode is sponsored by SiteGround. Guys, that's the web hosting company that we use. They're amazing. I've had no problems out of them. They have the best customer service on the market. And guys, you can get hosting through SiteGround for only $3.95 a month. All their servers are solid state drive, state-of-the-art equipment. Hands down, give them a shot. Go to thelibertyforge.com/hosting. Check them out today.
All right, man. Yeah, you get your swag in and your promos and all of that. But can we get to the interview now?
Yeah, man, I'm really excited about this one. Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's awesome having you on, but just knowing that you're kind of almost maybe sort of 2 counties over my neighbor, and
Right.
we share this crazy ideology or whatever you want to call it. That's awesome. I'm glad to finally get you on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Me too. I know we tried to do it a little earlier and have you on my show, and it didn't work out with the timing and everything. So I'm glad to be able to finally talk to you.
We find a way to make all good things happen. Guys, if you haven't heard either, because Sherry works this hard, either of her shows, you need to check them out. I will for sure make sure to put a link in the comments. But I'm really here lately, really liking Postcards from Somalia. Can you tell us a little bit about that show that you do with Adam?
Well, Alan Mosley of the Gold Standard.
Alan.
We do this show together. And I mean, as you can tell, if you're kind of inside baseball on our ideology, Somalia, you know, we're always told if you don't like it, you should just move to Somalia. So we thought, well, we'll do a show where that's our shtick. Like we've finally done it and gone there, and it's sort of a voluntarist inside look. It's just our opinions and us kind of ranting, and we have a pretty good chemistry, I think. So it's supposed to be fun. Sometimes we get a little excited, but it's more about stuff you probably already agree with if you're a voluntarist.
Yeah, it's a nice outlet to just, from what I can tell, just really get some things off of your chest. And it is inside baseball. It is, just a fun, entertaining show. And Mr. Mosley, being from the Gold Standard, a few of you in my audience should know the name. The guy's a good dude. It's a great show.
Yeah.
And today, why I wanted to have you on is you have this unique thing that not a lot of people that claim to be anarchists or libertarians or freedom lovers or whatever really possess today, and that's perspective. You can see arguments from an anarchist perspective, from a libertarian perspective, from a, hey, you're my neighbor, we just might want to be nice to each other perspective. Yeah. That's a lot. I don't see a lot of that going around these days.
I wonder if it's because I'm a woman, honestly. I mean, that probably has something to do with it. And, just my personality, but, and my background in Christianity probably too, a little bit. So I don't know. It seems that I do kind of offer that to people generally, some kind of hopefully level-headedness while still being principled, because that's really important to me.
As far as principles go, I get it. We should all hold ourselves to our own high principles and high standards. Mm-hmm. And that's what I try to do. However, I don't like it when I see people going around saying, and I know, guys, I'm talking about you. It's fine. It's okay. We're friends and adults. So
right.
When people go around, bootlickers, this, that, flag it, copsucker. No, I get it. These are jokes. It's an inside joke, and it's fun, and we laugh, and it's great. But to speak to other people that might halfway sort of be on your team in a way or two, it's not productive. It doesn't get anything accomplished. And the big split that I see is, not rude jokes and going to extremes or whatever, but just in general, voting libertarians and principled anarchists. Mm-hmm. Why can't those two groups of people get along?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have thought about it a lot, and I think that I've been reading a lot of G.K. Chesterton lately, just a lot of like his some excerpts of his work. And, one of the things he said is that tolerance is the virtue of the man without convictions. So I think as an anarchist, generally, we're people who go our own way, who are questioners, and we are not seeking the approval of authority. So I think sometimes in our interpersonal relationships, that can come across and be like, I think that's a really positive thing, but it can also be very negative if we don't sort of temper it with, what are our motivations for having this conversation? And I think sometimes, and this says a lot about, the libertarian movement, if you want to call it that, or libertarianism, is that many of them are young men, right? They're young men who are very passionate and very solidly convicted in what they believe. And that's great. But I think what they do lack is the perspective of years sometimes, that life is about compromise and not always getting what you want. Your ideal is not always practical or going to happen right then. So you have to sort of, you still aim for that, but to really assault other people sometimes so that they win the argument. And you can win the argument and you've not changed anybody's mind. And I think that's, what I tell people is don't aim to win an argument, aim to have the next conversation. I'm not the world's best at this. I mean, I'm not above getting into a fray on Facebook, but I try at least to not, I don't try to troll people purposefully all the time. Now, I have done it before because someone is just so annoying to me. But yeah. But I think we have to be not afraid to piss people off, too. If I'm speaking truth to you, it might piss you off. And that's okay. I can still be nice about it. And I can still, sometimes maybe you need to be pissed off a little bit. I told that to a lady the other day. She was, this terrible warmonger, all this stuff, like just trying to really, really talk about how, the president is doing the right thing and we've got to protect our country and, those Muslims over there, or they just deserve whatever they get. And I told her, if you believe this stuff, if you believe in conscription and, you believe that people should be put in jail for violent crimes and all these things, she was saying that, I on my mighty high horse, this is why libertarians never win anything. And I said, look, because we piss people off. And I said, look, if you believe those things, you deserve to be pissed off. You really do.
Sure.
Because nothing else is getting through to you. Like I tried to have this conversation with her, and just the fact that I said the things I said, like, well, maybe we're responsible for some of this stuff, some of this hatred coming our way. Don't you think that's played a bit into it? And no, you're just a libtard, right? That's the thing. And so finally I'm like, you deserve to be pissed off. If you can't be objectionable, what do I have to say to you but to piss you off and maybe make you think? Sometimes that's the tack you have to take with people. But I think in general, we try to, come at people from a perspective of how can I bring them along? I think that's the best way to do it. You catch more flies with honey, but it's not all about playing nice sometimes. Sometimes you have to piss somebody off, and it's not that should never be our goal. I don't think I never go into a conversation, my goal being able to get it, being in an argument with someone or pissing them off, like, oh, this friggin' statist. I want to believe the best in people, and I want to believe that all people want to live peacefully and in their areas, wherever they are in the world, that they just want to be left alone and be able to live the life that they see fit. That's my ideal about people when I go into it. But the more I talk to people, sometimes I realize, wow, they really do want to hurt people. They really do want to socially engineer the world to their image. And that's the left and the right.
Yeah. And some people can't be helped along. I mean, my co-host Merrick and I have covered moral agency on the show before. And when you lend out and give away all of your moral agency to other people and you stop being a responsible adult yourself, sometimes those people are too far gone. It's not easy to reach them. And I've been guilty of saying, well, you deserve to be offended, snowflake, or whatever.
It's frustrating. These people are
really
frustrating.
And I've done it, and, just kind of, you have to remove yourself from that.
Yeah.
But when you have somebody that's perfectly capable of helping you out, and you're perfectly capable of helping them out, like I believe that libertarians and anarchists could, if they ever friggin' agree on anything, it's like anarchist unite, right?
Well, I see anarchism as the fullness of libertarianism.
Sure.
So everything past anarchism is less libertarian by degree. That's my own take on it. Now, would I be happy in a minarchist society? Hell yeah. Like if it was actually minarchism, like just the, private utilities or public utilities of the state, whatever, am I going to be a lot happier in that society than I am now? Absolutely. But many people who call themselves minarchists aren't even that. So for me, that they're not different, anarchism and libertarianism, although I do realize that there are people who don't come all the way to anarchy, and I don't really need them to. I just need them to let me be. That's all. So we can agree on that, I think, as libertarians, anarchists, and as libertarians.
Well, I mean, haven't you heard, Sherry? Pragmatic is a dirty word.
I do have a problem with pragmatists.
I have a bigger problem with how they define pragmatists.
Yes,
Pragmatic.
That's probably a better way to look at it. Like and we all have to be pragmatic at times, right? Like that's just a function of life is, you got to make choices sometimes that aren't the best because we don't always have the option to make the best choice. But I think pragmatism is kind of a cancer, the way people use it and define it, especially in the Libertarian Party, because, I call them the prags, of course. Like
it's kind of like an excuse, right?
Yeah. I think pragmatism is sort of, it keeps business as usual, because what it does is it defines how you should act based on the best thing for right now. And it doesn't generally look to the future of where we're going. So I think a good example of that, and something that has really disappointed me lately, is Rand Paul, which I was starting to have more respect for. I've never been a huge fan of his, like so many libertarians. He's not my favorite guy out there, but he's certainly not the worst. And I do love his stance, on the war powers and the Patriot Act, all those things, his filibustering, like those are great things. But when he relented and went along with the confirmation of Kavanaugh, people were saying, well, that's pragmatic. I heard people arguing for that, and they were upset that people like me would be upset with him for doing that. But my thinking is when you have a person like Kavanaugh, who is, been a terrible jurist, he is not a friend of freedom. I think if you're a Christian, you think of that verse, by their fruits you shall know them. His fruits have been terrible. Like, he is not a liberty lover.
No, he was the scrivener on the
Right.
Patriot Act, for crying out loud. One of the worst pieces ever written. That was he had a hand in that. And
Right.
I agree with you with Rand, but I think we might, and this is fun, this is exciting because words mean things and definitions are important. I think we might actually disagree on the definition of pragmatic.
Maybe, yeah. I'll just finish this thought and then we can talk about that. That's okay. Is that with Rand, and I'm using it in the way that I hear people using it. So I could be completely wrong about it. But, everyone said, well, he has to be pragmatic because he would lose influence in the Republican Party if he didn't go along with them. And for me, I'm thinking, when is the time to stand on principle if not now? If not against this guy? And maybe standing on principle will actually be the thing that gets other people to stand on principle. Because if you keep going along with them, then you don't have the influence that you need to change them anyways. He hasn't changed the Republican Party too much. And it is great, as Amash and Massey and those people have tried to be as well. Their influence on the Republicans is quite small, unfortunately. So I think it goes, time to stand up at personal loss sometimes. Maybe he would lose any influence he has in the party, but maybe, just maybe, he would be a little more like his dad and fire people up who are ready for a change. And I think people are ready for that. At least some are.
When I was getting into this whole way of thinking and living and this philosophy, it was Rand. I missed the Ron Paul moment. I, was off in my own little world doing my own little selfish, self-destructive things. And it was Rand for me. And I've still got the Stand with Rand sticker on my motorcycle helmet and all this goofy stuff. But yeah, he really did kind of turn me on to the NSA sucks and war sucks and all this other stuff. And then I was like, oh, hey, there's one guy that happens to be a Republican. I live in Tennessee. I'm told to trust Republicans. Whatever. Right. I'll listen to this dude. And it led me to Rothbard all the way down to Larkin Rose. And you know the routine.
Yeah, I think that's great. Honestly, I mean, I came to libertarianism through Neil Bortz, of all people. I don't know if you remember him.
What?
Yeah.
The conservative dude from Atlanta.
Yeah, he was a libertarian.
I used to love Neil.
I know, me too, man. Before I was an actual libertarian, I thought he was the epitome of libertarianism. But it was really him talking about eminent domain that got me into it. But I think the problem is that when people... Like, I have nothing against Rand Paul as a human being, but when people hold a certain person up as a hero and that everything they're going to do from then on is we need to support, I think that's where we go off the rails. And it's easy to do. That's human nature, especially, I think, in such a marginalized community. I mean, let's face it, libertarians are not the majority of anything in this country. And, people, voluntarists, anarchists, whatever, they're even smaller. So it's nice when we hear people that share some of our point of view or whatever, and we want to kind of romanticize that. And I, like I said, I'm not above that all the time, but it's important, I think, to remember that they are people and that maybe sometimes we outgrow our mentors, that we move past them, and that's okay. But I really think that someone like Rand Paul, they're misusing the opportunities they have to make a stand. And not always, like, he hasn't always done that. I don't mean to blanket him with, he's just terrible. But on this, he really lost the respect I had gained for him because, you filibustered about the things this guy has been a part of doing. And then you're supposed to, you go have a private conversation with him and we're supposed to all go, okay, well, if you feel good about it, then we should. We'll trust you, Rand. No, I'm sorry. I'm not down for that. I don't like that. I don't agree with it. And I think there comes a time when, you may need to lose personally in order for liberty to win. You may need to take that stand. And of course, let's look at it. Rand is not ever going to be poor in his life. He's set for life. So even if he doesn't get into Congress again, or the Senate, he's going to be fine. So I think you just have to take your lumps sometimes, and you have to stand up and say, this is where I draw the line. And I'm not accepting some guy who's proven, I'm not installing him in the highest court in the land that basically rules the country for the rest of his life, someone who absolutely has already proven that the document that he's supposed to be interpreting as the law of the land, he cares nothing for. So
Yeah. And going back to what we started with, people that bash people that say, I'm being pragmatic, you have to realize that turning on your audience or your friends or your tribe or whatever, you don't call that pragmatism. You call that failing. You call that deceit. You call that a number of other things. Pragmatic, in my opinion, because I still use the word and I believe I use it correctly, is dealing with things in like a real world, with a real world kind of perspective, like knowing that, like if you've ever run a business or if you've ever been really good at achieving goals that you've set, knowing that things get in the way and you have to be kind of dynamic. You have to improvise, adapt, and overcome, right?
Sure.
This is where pragmatism comes into play, when you have to deal with these things and know that you're still goal-oriented, you're mission-focused, and you're still moving toward your goal. You just have to be, pragmatic in accepting conditions here and there, and those conditions being obstacles, not bribes and deals in Congress and all that dumb shit. That's selling your people down the river. That's not adjusting to circumstances to keep moving toward your goal. Now, if Rand and these other people, these other Libertarian Party members, if they were still mission-focused and showing progress and not failing, I believe they could still say that, hey, guys, I'm just being pragmatic here. Well, no, you're not. You've quit. You've abandoned the mission.
Yeah, I agree with you. I see what you're saying, and I do agree with that. That's just a function of life, is that, if you're not adaptable, you're going to walk around being a miserable person the rest of your life, because we all have to adapt. And as anyone who's, gotten to 30 or beyond or 40 or beyond, you start to learn that, wow, life isn't necessarily what I thought it was when I was younger. And you have to start making those adaptations. And those are fine things. That's the perspective that age should bring you, is to temper you a little bit. But I think one of the things you mentioned is important, and that is if we keep the goal in mind. And I think this is where many anarchists and I'll say party libertarians, where they really have the argument. It's that our goals are different. And for anarchists and most small L libertarians, I would think, the goal is to get rid of the state. And what I see from a lot of big L libertarians is that their goal is to play in the playground with the state. It's to keep the state going. So
right.
they often think that we have to keep this going in order to make it life better for people. So I think that's where, for me, I go, well, I'm dealing with some people in the Libertarian Party, and I've heard this from leadership. People are stupid, and we just need them to pull the lever by the L, just like they do for the R's and D's, and so that we can change things. Well, for one, that's really disrespectful to the people that you want their support.
It really is.
Yeah, it treats them the same way that the R's and D's do. And this is not a minority opinion within many libertarians, unfortunately. And so also the other thing is that, if you build a base in order to get elected, and that base is built on being, say, Republican light in our area, for sure, Republican light, you get elected, and then you get into office and you start trying to actually be a libertarian, I think you'll shoot yourself in the foot, and it will all be wasted anyways, because people are going to feel lied to and they're going to feel upset. So I think that what ends up happening, or what would end up happening if the libertarians were ever elected to any real power, is that they would become the same sort of whores that the rest do. Because if you're having to play to a base in order to keep your power, because this is what happens to regular principled people who go up to make changes, they go, well, I'll say what I have to say now so I can get elected. And then they keep having to play that game because they have to keep a voter base going. And
yeah.
I just go, well, I'd rather, if you're going to run candidates, I'd rather them be unapologetically libertarian, not unapologetically asses, but unapologetically libertarian, be who we are and let people decide. That's how we're going to get that message out there to them. Because very few people, if you want to be elected, if that is your goal, then you're going to say what you need to say. If your goal is to get the libertarian message out there, then you will say the libertarian things regardless of whether people vote for you or not. And I think that's putting a lot of faith in people, hopefully, because you don't want to be, if we have a representative government, do you really want to be the representative that doesn't represent them? Like, we want to change their minds. Politics is downstream of culture, right? So we want to change that culture. And unfortunately, I think sometimes the only way to get to reach those people is to get into the political fray and run as a candidate, but have something different to say, not try to sound like the other two, because we're different and we're not the middle.
Well, that's where a lot of people are, is in that, from my perspective, that political dumpster fire. Let's use your county mayor as an example. When Glenn Jacobs, the big red Mises machine, was running for county mayor in Knox County, but before he even primaried or whatever, you guys got to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah.
And he did not shy away from talking about the Mises Institute. He did not shy away from telling people he was a libertarian and he believed that taxation is theft. And as a small business owner, he feels the theft. And
Right.
he did all that. He said all those things under a big R.
Right.
And some people can do that. Some people can't. People feel different ways about it. Like, oh, he might be a hypocrite. Maybe he might be. I don't know. I've never met the guy. But I do know this. Having a Mises guy 2 counties over from my driveway, if I keep my mouth shut and stay under the radar, I might be able to get away with a few more things that bring more individual liberty into my life, into my family's life, and make my whole community better. If I just shut up, keep an eye on that guy, like, hey, he might do some shit. Hold on, no, give him a month or two. Just watch, wait for it.
Right.
And he loosens something up, loosens regulations up over here, or does something for business over there, or whatever his sneaky little libertarian ass can do. Let's take advantage of that as agorists, as anarcho-capitalists. We're supposed to be good at this. We talk a good game. Why don't you let that man work when he creates some kind of environment that either benefits you or provides something that you can absolutely take advantage of? Work with that. That's a lot more productive than just bitching at one another.
Yeah. Amen. I agree with that. And I think that, my point of view on how to use the political system may be different than other people's, but I don't want to get in someone else's way, but I want to speak what I see as the truth and speak up and say, well, this is how I feel it should be done. But I don't want to stop people from, if they really feel like that's where they can make a difference, well, more power to you. Like, if you're really trying to get the message out there, like a Glenn Jacobs, like I've often said, I don't care what people call themselves. I don't care if they call themselves Republicans for the rest of their life. I don't care. I don't care what people call themselves. I remember a story a friend of mine told me where her mother had been going to her church for years, which was a Protestant church, but she still called herself a Catholic. She didn't believe anything Catholic anymore. But that, to her, it was for some reason, it was comforting. I guess she thought it was genetic or something. But, I think people are sometimes like that with the labels of Republican or Democrat or whatever. So, okay, fine. If you need to do that, or like in Glenn's case, he ran as a Republican because I know I was looking at the numbers in Knox County. They've elected like 1 Democrat, I think it was, ever, and that was in like 1940 something. So, they're not the most open-minded, friendly to outside opinion around here. And most people, like almost every Republican politician that I ever interviewed on the radio, came in and said, well, I'm actually a libertarian. And I'm like, actually, you're not. But,
Actually,
right,
no.
actually.
You probably think Glenn Beck's a libertarian too, don't you? That's adorable.
Yeah, isn't that cute? But, as long as, if they're trying to get on my good side, fine. Let me try and make them more libertarian. Let me talk about that. I think that's good, but I love Glenn's example, and I think he can be a good example to people that you can be who you are and still run as a Republican or even a Democrat if that's what you needed to do and win. Now, do I think that the political process is the best way to do things? I don't know. I really struggle with that. As an anarchist, I struggle being in the party. I'm not going to lie. I'm not all on board with the political process. You know, I don't even vote. The last time I voted was for Glenn Jacobs, and,
Right.
and I hadn't voted in years for that because I don't think that that's the best way to go. But on the other hand, I want to make alliances with people who agree with me or coalitions, even if it's in one area where someone agrees with me, fine, let's make a coalition and try and move this like civil asset forfeiture. Good grief. There's some people in town here doing some great stuff against civil asset forfeiture that are not libertarians. They are conservatives. They might be libertarian leaning conservatives, but you know what? That's something that will, like you said, benefit everyone. That's good for everyone. So do I want to stand on, I don't think it's standing on principle to go, well, I'm not dealing with a Republican. That's not the kind of principle.
I think that's called a soapbox.
Yeah, that's religion, really. That's religious. That's, you know, the Navalites and the non-Navalites. Like who did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? And so you split the church over that. You know, that's that kind of stuff. What I care about is the deep philosophical standing of people. And are they open to learning? Are they open to hearing what I have to say? I'm going on the radio tomorrow. The morning show there, they had one of the Libertarian Party candidates on the other day, and someone called in and said, hey, can you have Sherry come on and be a guest and talk about some of that ANCAP stuff, whatever that is, you know? And so I'm like, I'm surprised they remembered for one, but you know, am I going to not go on the show because there's some Republicans? Like, no, I'm going to do it. You know, they're not my enemies. I think that's where we have to get, is that people are not our enemies. The state is our enemy.
Right. And your allies can be part-time. That's okay.
Exactly. And so I think that's a good perspective to have, is that I think the more you work with people, the more they start to trust you as well and go, okay, you know, you're not such a crazy person after all. Because I mean, the word anarchism scares people. That's why we don't use it that often, because honestly, they look at you like you're crazy. And I have lost friends over this, or you know, kids in the neighborhood not playing with my kids anymore because someone finds out I'm an anarchist, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
They don't understand it, and they don't take the time to find out because they're that scared. That's the indoctrination machine, and that's what we want to fight. And so, is it dishonest to call myself a voluntarist over a libertarian because that doesn't scare people? Well, no, because the message is the important thing, right? And getting the message out there, and not me being some edgy anarchist. And like I said, people don't have to come all the way to anarchy with me. What I want them to come to is, you can live your life the way you want. You don't have the right to force me to live the way you want. If we could just get to a point in our society where the 75% that call themselves Christians actually believed in the golden rule, we'd be doing a hell of a lot better just in that one particular instance. And so I think that if we can just get to talk to people about, well, have you considered that if you make a contract with the bank, say, and you pay off your mortgage and you own your land, right? But if you don't pay your property tax, they can take it away from you. Have you considered that that's violence against people? You know, I don't think I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it that way. Taxation as theft I think we forget sometimes when we're in, you know, we talk about that stuff all the time. We talk about violence and coercion, and we've got really clearly laid out definitions of violence, and we see the violence of the state. Most people do not, and they've not even ever thought about it as violence. So it's very radical to them when you speak libertarian, speak to them. So I think we have to remember that we get immune to that. It's not radical to us anymore, but it's very radical to them. So let's, you know, if we want to really win people over to our side, I think we have to kind of step back sometimes and realize that sometimes the words we use are very shocking to people and may not have the effect that we want on them.
Yeah, it definitely helps to gain a little perspective when dealing with anybody, if they're close to your camp or not. Just understanding that we don't all have to be enemies, and you don't
Right.
have to be an ally that agrees with someone 100% or not even 90%. I mean, your buddy Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center said it best. He said, I will work with anybody.
Yeah.
Let's just get this done.
I admire that guy so much. I love him. He is one of the most lighthearted, joyous people, smart and funny. You know, he's got all these things going for him, and he cares about the message. He doesn't care if he has to work with someone who calls himself a Democrat or a Republican or whatever. He'll hold his nose and do that because he wants to make a difference, a real one, and not just spin his wheels. And it's like with protests. This is a good example. People are always, I want to go protest this and protest that. And do protests really affect anything? No, they don't. Not generally. It makes people feel better. And I've been a part of a protest before. Like, you feel better. Yeah, I'm out here standing and up for this. And that's not
catharsis.
Bad. Yes. And that's not bad on its own. But if that's all you ever do, if you're just protesting this and protesting that, then you're just kind of spinning your wheels. It's like mental assent. It's always, you feel like you're doing something, but you're not really doing something that matters. So I think that as libertarians, we have to sort of look and see, okay, are we spinning our wheels? Like, I know there are a lot of people. I love Facebook, right? I'm all about it. I think it's a great tool to get the message out there. But sometimes I think that's all people do. And that's all they think they have to do. And then all they do is like criticize somebody like Michael Bolden because, he's working with the state, the statists. And I'm like, dude, he's actually done more to battle the NSA and some of these, terrible laws in states than almost anybody else. And you're going to criticize him because you're so much better than him. There's a lot of egotism in that. And there's a lot of just not going, wow, I'm really thankful somebody's willing to do that because he works very hard for very little. He deserves a lot more respect, I think, than he gets from some people.
Yeah, well, I mean, with instant gratification and people's attention spans being as short as they are on social media like that, I mean, I love Michael. I love the work he does. I think he's a great guy, but, his memes just aren't dank enough. You got to step that game up a little bit, buddy.
Right.
Grab these 2.5-second attention span of all these people that we're friends with, honestly. And we are. I can reach across the Libertarian Party. I can reach across to Tea Party Republican rednecks.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be one.
Right.
It's not hard. Like, hey, we're going to the range. Cool. Let's talk about taxation. Oh, shit. There, Kyle's going again. Oh, my God. Whatever.
Right.
Well, he paid for ammo this time. I guess I'll listen to him.
Right. Yeah. and that's great, though, too, because if you befriend people, they're more likely to listen to you. They're more likely to, even if they still disagree with you, sometimes it's about planting a seed. It's not about, I don't know of anybody that's converted, right away. Like, it takes time, especially when you think about how long we spend in public schools being indoctrinated, and it starts in the cradle to the grave, right? The state indoctrination of you need us. So if you expect people to just come that full circle right away, I think, we're all on a spectrum, and that's a really short-sighted thing to do, and to be really hard on people. Like I said, I just need people to come to the point of, hey, you know what? I don't like the way you live, but you got the right to live it that way. And I don't have the right to use the proxy force against you. Like, that would be transformative in our world if we had that. So that doesn't even require telling people what you are or, making them feel bad for whatever they've done. Like, it just requires, hey, think about it this way. Would you like that done to you? You don't like it when the liberals are in charge and you get Obamacare, right? And you're forced to get the state insurance, right? You didn't like that. So think about it in return then. When you don't like it, try not to do it to other people. And so I think that's a really important point to make, is that we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different people that we can reach. And none of us have arrived or ever will. None of us are ever going to be the perfect libertarian or the perfect whatever, anarchist or, husband or child or whatever, parent. None of us are ever going to be perfect in anything that we do. All we can do is strive for our ideals and let people see our perspective and deal with it from there.
Yeah, and realize that most people have this idea of a dichotomy. And it's tribal thinking. It's all these things. And like you said,
Right.
from public school to the grave, it's a false dichotomy that we live in. It's our team and their team. It's left and right. It's this and that. And even the people that say, oh, well, there's a third choice. There's a third party. Well, you're still playing to that dichotomy. And if that's
Yeah.
your game, fine. Catch some flies with that shit. I'm not
Right.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
stop you. If you're going to be effective, if you're going to reach people, one thing you have to do is realize the structure in which you're trying to operate and realize that the control mechanism of this structure that we call the false dichotomy is fear. That's what the state does best. That's how they steal your moral agency away from you and hoodwink you into supporting one of these sides to push that forward.
Absolutely. And I think I've always called it like the tidal wave of fear, because that's really, you're right. It's their bread and butter. It's how the state stays in power. It's why the left and right dichotomy is so effective, because the right can keep saying those liberals, they want to take your guns away. And the left can keep saying those Republican or those conservatives, they want to make abortion illegal and they want to take your right to your own body away. And we as libertarians, being a totally different animal, which I think is important to point out too, is that libertarians are not the middle. We're a different animal. We start on the basis that property rights are foundational and that you are your first property, right? And you own yourself completely. And that's important because no one has the right to coercively or violently make you do something that you don't want to do. So I think we have to remember that we are different and that we work from a place of philosophy and principle. We have something to offer people that is different, and that you can be a conservative and you can be a liberal and you can be whatever you want, built on top of libertarian bedrock. So libertarianism, dealing with mitigating violence in society, that is the starting point. And the NAP is the starting point of morality. It's not the end. It's where it begins. It begins when you say, okay, I don't have the right to force someone to do my good ideas, and they don't have the right to force me. And so I think that if we all could get that understanding and really get that down, that maybe we could bring a little more people to that. Because I really don't care if people call themselves libertarians. That's not in a general way. Like if my whole neighborhood wanted to continue to call itself Republican, but they also wanted to, end the coercive taxation, well, fine, I'm good with that.
Well, I mean, sign me up, right?
Yeah,
I put an R in
exactly.
front of my name.
Right, yeah. But yeah, I think it's important to be principled and to stand on those things and to really make that difference known, and not to try and sound more like them. Maybe use their language, but talk about your particular politics, or talk about your principles, but maybe figure out how to do it in their language. That's something I've been talking about more lately with people, is using Christianity to lay out to them why this or that is not a good idea. And it's effective with a lot of people, because a lot of people identify with Christianity and they understand the Christian message. And like I said, 75% of the country says they're Christians. So you want to change people, learn to speak their language, whatever that may be. Know your audience.
Yeah. And if you're building a personal philosophy, which each of us, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say each of us that are liberty-minded and are seeking individual liberty, we have to revisit and build our own individual philosophy. I mean, that's not easy work. I mean, that's what we're in general, that's what we're asking people to do.
Yes.
But in starting to build anything, you start with a foundation, and the best foundation for personal philosophy is correct definitions and solid principles.
Yeah. There are going to be variations of what a good life is to me and to you, and what it is to be a good person. And I think there's a really great book that has helped me so much. And I know I talk about it a lot. I feel like I'm always talking about it, but I've read it like 4 times, and I'm going to read it 4 more than likely. It's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if you've heard of it, but the subtitle is Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion. And yeah, it's great. And the guy is a social, what do they call that? A social something theory. And he's a scientist. He's a social scientist, I guess. He's come up with this foundational moral foundations theory, and it talks about why genetically even we are predisposed to be liberal or conservative or libertarian. And he's made a new category just for libertarians because he's recognized that we are a different animal, right?
Sweet.
We're not like, yeah, it's really great. I don't know if in the versions of the book I've read yet, I think some of the libertarian stuff has been a little more fleshed out since, but he's got a lot of great YouTube videos as well on it. He's a really smart guy. And what it told me was that, I need to learn to appeal to compassion of liberals if I want to get them to come towards libertarianism. I need to learn to appeal towards the justice mindset of conservatives if I want them to come more towards libertarianism. There's a way to do that. I think that this shouldn't put people in a box and go, oh, well, we could never change anything because these people are predisposed to that. It's just, the thing is making them see that it's beneficial to them as well as to us to still be compassionate, but realize that I am not subject to your good ideas, that I'm not, if you want to go help the poor, go do that. Don't make me pay for a welfare system that's not even effective. So I think that we can do those things, but understanding that people are different and they have justified reasons for being different. And it's not bad. Liberals are not evil people. They have a different starting point. They have different things that concern them. I think anything can lead to evil.
I mean, it's the road to hell, right?
Yes, but to remember that the people themselves, they're not doing what they do out of being evil people. They're doing what they do because they really believe what they believe as well. And they believe they're right. And so how do we bridge that gap? And I think learning what is people's basic foundations is an important step in that, because then you can talk to them on their own terms. Because I think libertarianism, I think you can be all those things and be a libertarian because you can realize that, okay, I just can't make other people do what I want. That's the difference. And so.
And you can even scale that down to political libertarians and agorists. If a political libertarian can loosen up some regulations in your area and you're an agorist, you should be excited about that.
Yeah.
And if some liberty-minded innovator comes up with some technology, I don't know, let's call it blockchain, that's going to help everybody, you political libertarians better get off of your ass and get to work about making that accepted in your area, in your circle of influence. You should be preaching that 256-bit encryption gospel.
Yeah, take the wins where we can. Just take the wins and go. I'm thankful for that. Now I'll keep doing my thing. And I gotta say, I have so much admiration for agorists. I wouldn't call myself one. I'm sort of, I guess you would call a pragmatic agorist, right? I try to.
I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah, and I do. I think it's a brilliant strategy. I think people who pull it off in a major way, they have my respect and admiration because it's so not easy to do.
Tons of respect, yeah.
Yeah. So I have to aspire to that.
It takes a certain part of the male anatomy to really just go 100% in the agorist direction. Yeah, that's for sure.
It does.
Well, Sherry, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome. I love this back and forth about libertarians and anarchists. And, we're not all that different. Means and ends. Yeah. Ends are similar. Means all over the map. That's never going to rhyme or look the same. But hey, understand that all men aren't obstacles, and you don't have to agree with somebody 100% to be an ally. Like Michael Bolden, like Sherry Voluntary, just put it aside and get shit done. Sherry, where can they find all of your work?
Well, I am a member of a group called Little L Productions that is just starting up a media company. And so you can catch us there. Facebook and YouTube are really, my main places at this point, but I'm on all the podcatchers pretty much. You've got iTunes and SoundCloud and Stitcher. I'm also on TuneIn. So if you have that on your Alexa, you can say, "Hey, Alexa, play Sherry Voluntary Show," and it will play, which is pretty cool. So you can catch me in all those places. If I could just give a little shout out to the Little L Productions shows are Sherry Voluntary Show, Postcards from Somalia, The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley, and Sports Ball with Alan Mosley and Mike Meharry, which is a really fun libertarian sports show. So I enjoy it. I'm not even a big sports fan.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's great.
That sounds awesome. That's a perfect name, by the way, because Merrick, my co-host, is always telling me, "What's with you in the sports ball?" I'm like, "Kentucky's good at football this year. Shut up."
Yeah. They did it sort of like why we named ours Postcards in Somalia too. It's sort of a play on, people, they're sports ball, because it's bread and circuses and everything. Like, it's so evil to like sports. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kyle. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
That's great. Thank you again, Sherry.
Sure.
Wow, guys, definitely check out Sherry's work. She does a really good job with the shows that she does with Alan and the rest of the guys. Merrick, what'd you think of it?
I loved it. I think she's awesome. I think her perspective is super cool, especially coming from a guy like me. And I know that you're similar to me in this way, that you came from the minarchist realm, from that paradigm.
Tea Party, baby.
Yeah, Tea Party, 3%, or limited government. In the words of my friend Nima, government should be so small that it's only theorized about by particle theorists or something like that. I think I butchered it, but
something like that. Way smaller than that bathtub I keep hearing about.
Yeah, smaller than the bathtub. You shouldn't be able to drown it in a bathtub. Yeah, I really enjoy hearing from people like that who can reach across the aisle and who can join hands. A lot of us started into our, I almost said descent, and that would be totally the wrong word, but a lot of us started our journey towards anarchy from the Ron Paul movement. And a lot of that was kind of Big Tent. I'll work with you regardless of what you feel about anything else, even if you're a voter, or even if you're a statist, even if you're this or that. I'll work with you on this issue if you can help me get the government out of it. And the conversation that you guys had really kind of dove down deep into the dregs of that. And I find that fascinating because that's the way that I do it. I'll talk to anybody about anything, and I'll be honest about it. And if I have to disagree with them, I will disagree without being disagreeable. And that's what you guys hit. And that's what I really appreciated about it.
Yeah. And a perfect example of that we talked about in the interview was Michael Bolden. I mean, he's the guy from the 10th Amendment Center. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's like a 100% all the way principled anarchist. But, he's out there. His voice is out there. People know who he is. People know he's doing good work, and he's not afraid to work with, pretty much anybody.
No, absolutely. And he's very agreeable, and he's very funny if you've ever talked to him. I wrote for him for a while a few years ago for the 10th Amendment Center blog, and dealt with him and his people, and they're all just wonderful. And that's great. I mean, he's reaching out to a lot more people than we are. So why would anybody dump on that? Just have fun with it. This guy's he's got a joke up his sleeve every 5 seconds.
Yeah, and I'm guessing he's one of those guys who thinks kind of like I do, like I have all these principles and these standards and these things that I have to hold myself accountable to. I don't go around pretending that I have the right to hold anybody else accountable to what I see as being right in the personal philosophy that I've built up. And that's really the point that I wanted to drive home is, number one, take care of yourself, hold yourself accountable. Number two, learn the definition of the word pragmatism. It's not the exact same as selling out on your principles and selling other people down the river to control them in scare quotes. Words have definitions. Somebody told me that the other day.
I wonder who that was.
I don't know, some jerk. Anyways, words mean things. Don't murder the language because you want to be intellectually superior. Guys, whether you like it or not, we're all in this together. And Sherry really is catching flies with honey. And, her shows are great, especially Postcards from Somalia. I know you've heard it, Merrick.
No, absolutely. I love that.
That's the inside jokes. That's the funny stuff. That's the bootlicker memes and all that funny stuff. I really like that.
Oh, we have such a good time with it, but they're just jokes, people. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah. But definitely check out her shows. I'm going to have links in the show notes. And next time, Merrick, I think it's just going to be you and I.
Yay.
Yeah. I have no idea what we're talking about. Should be a blast. Guys, love one another and forge your liberty.
Ding.
The other one.
Adi.
There you go.